have the question, how do I use visualization for chronic pain? And I really love this question because it's something that people rarely ask. So whoever asked this, kudos to you for wanting to explore this. There are a couple of things to think about. So even before we talk about the visualization, what are the things to keep in mind? One of the reasons why people, I mean, and this has been since the time of Kabat-Zinn, the idea of just visualization for chronic pain to soothe, for instance, flares, or even whenever you're increasing, you feel stress in your body and you're just trying to soothe yourself, visualization can help in all of those situations. One of the first things to remember is that even just closing your eyes strengthens the dominant brainwave signal for relaxation, which is called the alpha brainwave. So even just if you close your eyes right now, you've just changed how your brain is functioning slightly. You've introduced more of the type of brainwave that supports relaxation. And one of the reasons why a lot of times people say to close your eyes before meditations and other things like that is because this type of alpha wave actually promotes clearer, sharper, stronger visualization of imagery. So it actually helps you see by closing your eyes, which is sort of an ironic thing. One of the other aspects here is that visualization doesn't just have to be visual, it can be multisensory. And in fact, the best visualization is. So there's something called an access sense. And an access sense is the dominant sense that's sort of like the doorway to visualization for you, or rather imagination for you. So one way to identify your access sense is to close your eyes. And for instance, we can all do this right now. Just imagine sitting in your favorite place, wherever that is, and imagine taking your favorite food into your hands and putting it into your mouth. And the first sense, whether it's sight or touch or smell or taste or smell that feels most dominant to you there. For instance, whenever I described that, did you taste the flavor of the food first? Or did you see it really clearly in your mind? Or could you hear the crunching? Or could you feel it on your fingers? Whatever sense comes through the strongest first is called your access sense. And that's just sort of like a way to, it means that is one of it's a bridging sense that helps you visualize more clearly. So if you were to do visualization, you could always begin with your access sense to sort of open up your inner capacity to visualize. So for instance, if someone's access sense is smell, they might first do all of their visualizations or meditations imagining the smell of lavender. So that's a use of the access sense. And then other people can visualize, and the reason why I bring this up is that people have different capacities to visualize, to close their eyes and see a picture in their mind. And that has nothing to do with how well you can visualize. I think the word visualization is a little bit of a misnomer because actually the best word would be sensualization, any of your senses. So the idea is that if you can close your eyes and create a scene or an experience with any of your senses, that can be used to soothe yourself. It can be used to soothe pain. It can be used to soothe stress. And one of the things to do is that this is actually in a sense, an attentional muscle that you can practice. So maybe it's easier for you to experience visualization, imagining yourself inside the scene, or maybe looking at the scene as if you're on the outside. Maybe it's easier for you to zoom in on different details of the visualization, and that's a way to sort of help you stay engaged with it. So this will be different for every single person. which is why it's also a suggestion to explore what about imagining a situation, what is most salient to you? What is most interesting to you? What feels most natural to you? And one of the other things that can support visualization for chronic pain is practicing body scan meditations. And one of the tracks in Aivo app is do a body scan meditation every day. And if you haven't done this yet, you can ask your coach, you can ask Coach Vlad to cue that up on your playlist. But the reason why body scan meditations are so interesting is it is a form of visualization, but it's also practicing placing your attention on different parts of your body, which it helps with how accurately your brain can perceive your body. And it's something that we often don't pay attention to because we're distracted, we're kind of dissociated from our bodies. Many of us, for much of our lives, we've sort of zoned out, like blanked out our body and not been in touch with it. And it actually takes a little practice to get in touch with, for instance, if you have a lower back, which we all do, what does lower back pain feel like, or lower back sensation feel like compared to mid back or upper back? Because whenever you do these visualizations, the more accurately you can feel it in your body, the more effective the meditation or the visualization becomes. So there are a lot of skills here that you can practice. The other aspect of this that whenever I was going through my initial mindfulness training for chronic pain management, there were a lot of visualization exercises, but no one ever explained to me why they worked. And so I'm going to explain to you here, if you have any if you do any visualization meditation, for example, the principles of it are similar, and you can probably do it better yourself by understanding these 4 types of interoceptive sensation. Interoceptive just means inside your body. And the reason why I have these 4 listed out here is that many of the experiences, whenever you close your eyes and you feel pain in your body, you can map it based on these 4 and sometimes more dimensions. So for example, if I feel heavy pain in my abdomen versus a light tingling, prickling pain traveling up my leg, those are expressions of mass. If I have burning pain in my lower back versus numb or cold prickling pain in my hand, that's an expression of temperature. Some pain travels, radiates, shoots, so that's more movement. And then other pain is highly localized and stays in one spot. And for those of us who are blessed with multiple pains, there can be multiple patterns of pain that all happen together at the same time. Also, there's this idea of cohesiveness. So for instance, if you have pain in one specific muscle, that's dense, it's in a very specific place, versus a lot of visceral pain. For instance, in the abdomen and the pelvis is experienced as diffuse or loose. It sort of feels like it's spread out throughout the whole, your whole abdomen. And even sometimes it feels like the pain is outside of your body. It's so diffuse. Muscle pain can also feel very diffuse. For instance, people with body-wide pain, body-wide muscle pain might feel like it's just sort of spread everywhere and even comes out of the body, like just the space around your body can feel painful. So the first step here is to look at which of these qualities, how would you describe the pain that you're feeling in the moment? And then it's a matter of imagining the opposites of this pain. So for example, and this is a principle that all visualization works on, you always give your body, you imagine the opposite quality of the pain. So let's say if you're looking at the mass, and you can play around with different combinations of these things, but for instance, if you have heavy pain in your legs, for example, or if you feel heavy pain in your lower back, imagining light sensations or colors flooding into that area. And what that is doing is that superimposing this lightness onto the heaviness. Or for instance, if you have tingling pain, so very light feelings of pain, like tingling or prickling, you can imagine warm, heavy water being poured over it. So again, you're using opposites. If you have hot burning pain, imagining a cool blue bath of light or of water, whatever you're most comfortable with. But here we have both the temperature here, we have the color. Blue is often associated with water or with coolness. And that is sort of superimposed and neutralizes the burning pain. If your body part is numb, for instance, if you have numb feet, imagining warm bubbling sensations, movement, flooding through that numb body part, you're adding the warmth that counters the cool numbness, and you're adding movement to an area of the body that doesn't feel like it's getting any input. And so these are all examples, for example, motion. If you have sharp shooting pain, imagining like a thick layer of honey in that body part. The pain then has to shoot through the honey, and it's very hard to move anything through honey because it's so thick and viscous. Or for instance, if you have sharp localized pain in a very specific area of your body, imagining like bubbling spring water in that area helps loosen up that energy, the core of that, the density of that. And so whenever you explore this type of approach, you can then combine different qualities here in a way that whatever your pain is like in that moment, you're able to identify the opposites of it and create sort of like a recipe or an ingredient list for what types of sensory qualities you can imagine that will counter and neutralize the pain that you're feeling. Sometimes it reduces a little, sometimes it neutralizes it completely, and sometimes it doesn't work. And all of those things are okay, because what may work one day may not work another day. So this is something that's so exquisitely individual for every single person. But for example, this, I bring this up with a lot of seriousness. A lot of people with neuropathic pain conditions that I've worked with respond so well because, for instance, neuropathic pain, there's often an actual physical lesion in the body that explains pain, and yet there's also a lot of emotional suffering. So, for instance, people with CRPS or postherpetic neuralgia or neuropathic back pain, that pain is often very burning, very hot. And one of the things, whenever medication can't do anything, visualization, these types of visualization and imagining cool blue light on top of that burning hot, area can actually soothe the pain. So this is one of the areas where it really demonstrates how strong the mind is. So I take this very seriously. This isn't, I know that perhaps visualization of pain, depending on how how the idea is communicated, there's a risk of like, oh, I can't just imagine my pain away. I can definitely understand that. And yet at the same time, your brain is so powerful. It's so incredibly powerful. And for instance, at the periods of time, what comes to mind is there's a woman who, she had neuropathic pain, and there'd be certain areas at the peak of her pain flares where she just couldn't handle it. She felt like she couldn't handle it. And it was a very specific quality to that pain. And we worked together to find a visualization that neutralized it to where even if that peak of the pain happened, it was then bearable for her. She could get through it. And then she'd know she could do something during that peak of pain that would get her through it. So I wanted to share this in a lot more detail, perhaps, than you've ever had before, about how you can create visualizations that are perfectly matched to your pain. And this is one of the strategies that you can do whenever pain is light or strong. So are there any questions about visualization and pain? Okay.
The pain is like, it's like a feeling of, there's like a feeling of stiffness, or, you know, like, yeah, I have a lot of stiffness.
So water, flowing water, loosening, expansive. One of the other interesting things I've noticed a lot with pain, it feels constricting, tightened, and relief feels expansive. So any kind of expansive imagery, and this is the same with emotions. Whenever we feel emotions in our body, anger is tight, anxiety is tight.
Yeah.
And then whenever you feel the release of that, it opens up. So so movement and expansion would be a couple of things to experiment with. I mean, sometimes and or both. For instance, even just imagining water being poured on that area to loosen it up, warm water, but also a flower blossoming in that area. Like imagining a rose blossoming in that area is a way of expanding it out. So there are a lot of ways that we can play with this.
Thank you.